Hi everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today we have an exciting episode for you.
Woohoo!
We're going to take you on a bit of an adventure.
Another road trip.
Yes! With a select handful of my Year 12 British Literature students. Just finished reading Charles Dickens' David Copperfield. We are going to search for Edward Dickens, his youngest son's grave in Moree.
So yeah, this is becoming a bit of an annual habit for you, isn't it? I mean,
It is.
And you drag me along, and we go out together.
You're very obliging.
On this quest. I can't think of a more bleak drive than that between Inverell and Moree.
Oh, but it's
a number of bleak houses that we pass, as it were.
So my Year 12 British Literature students study David Copperfield, which was Charles Dickens' favorite novel. By far, it's quite autobiographical, and he finished it in 1850. And 2 years later, his youngest child, his 10th child, was born, Edward Bulwer Lytton Dickens, aka Plorn. That was his family nickname.
Why Plorn? It sounds like poor and forlorn.
Yes, I thought that, but you actually helped me dig up some information this year, and it's his godfather's nickname, and it was Plornish Maroon Lagunter was the entire name.
I'm sorry I asked.
It's so bizarre. Anyways, Dickens sent many of his characters off to Australia when they had fallen on hard times in England, and all of his characters did really well here.
Can I just say that I thought people from England came to Australia when they fell on hard times as a way for those times to become even harder?
You know, Dickens created this fantasy about Australia, that they would find this spouse they were always looking for, they would suddenly become wealthy, they'd be a magistrate.
So let me ask you this, there are many famous authors and many famous artists in the world who bring forth children, not all of whom go on to fame and fortune. As Edward himself said, you can't have two Charles Dickens in the space of a generation, right?
Right. Yeah.
So why are you so enamored of this remote location?
Well, I think it creates a beautiful connection for the students that these people lived here as well. And Edward was kind of the straw, or rather the child that broke the marriage of his parents. It was already in strife when he was born, but really his father was very embarrassed about the increasingly public severance that they were undergoing and didn't want him to actually be there to see it. So he sent him to Australia at the very young age of 15. He turned 16 on the boat. Initially, Edward did quite well for himself, and he became a station manager. He married Constance Staley, became a member of Parliament. But then increasingly, his name, which originally had given him fortune or fame, became something that wasn't so favored anymore, and he kind of fell out with the locals. He invested a lot in the Moree Jockey Club, but then got into gambling and drinking. So he died at the age of 49, 50, penniless, wifeless, childless, and very, very
Full
sad.
of sound and fury,
Yes.
thinking, oh, that was somebody else.
For many years, there was nothing to note that he was buried in Moree except a plaque in the Anglican Church. But in recent decades, the Dickens Society in Sydney raised awareness and funds to actually locate his grave and then put a plinth with a marker for his spot. I always read the Polonius-like letter that Charles penned to his son and had him read when he was departing, because it's quite beautiful, and some of the words are echoed on the plaque in the church. Some of the most poignant paragraphs read, "I write this note today because your going away is much upon my mind, and because I want you to have a few parting words from me to think of now and then at quiet times. I need not tell you that I love you dearly and am very, very sorry in my heart to part with you. But this life is half made up of partings, and these pains must be borne. It is my comfort and my sincere conviction that you are going to try the life for which you are best fitted. I think its freedom and wildness more suited to you than any experiment in a study or office would ever have been, and without that training you could have followed no other suitable occupation. Never take a mean advantage of anyone in any transaction, and never be hard upon people who are in your power. Try to do to others as you would have them do to you, and do not be discouraged if they fail sometimes. It is much better for you that they should fail in obeying the greatest rule laid down by our Savior than that you should. I hope you will always be able to say in after life that you had a kind father. You cannot show your affection for him so well or make him so happy as by doing your duty. Your affectionate father."
It's a really touching letter, but I can't help feeling that part of that is Dickens writing to himself and almost novelizing his son's life and future. There's a lot of wish fulfillment happening in
We
that.
get a lot of that when we study a book like David Copperfield. He marries a child bride and has her conveniently die so that he can marry the love of his life, Agnes, his ideal woman. I agree with you. I think there's a little bit of writing to himself.
So a cemetery may be an unusual place to go for a field trip, I'll grant you that. But it was noticeable to watch the students also taking in other aspects of history, and you can get a real sense of what that town would have been like, 100 years or more ago. Also when people were struggling to found the town. There were many young women who died in childbirth. You can see their graves.
Yeah.
And you get a slice of history just by walking around there and taking time to encounter that.
Yeah, and I think it was quite confronting to them because many of the tombstones bear young men with their age, which is 16, 17, and that was quite powerful for them to see. And we also visited other graves of note, including one of the founding town mothers who was cut off by a flood during childbirth, and the local indigenous women helped her to a successful birth. And other amazing stories of old fathers and mothers of the town who really did it tough in their early years. So they found it very intriguing.
I'm interested to hear too what the reflections your students gave you were after this day.
For them it was a living link to history. It's not just something that's in a book, it's people that really lived, it's families, it's stories, and it's generations upon generations of living and loving and learning and heartbreak and life.
Yeah, and a good counter lunch at the Amaru Tavern never hurts either, does
Yes,
it?
it did. They had a real experience.
So on balance, that was actually a fun day.
You're very long-suffering.
Yeah, no.
Barkus is willing.
Yes, something will turn up, yes. It was fun also to stop off at Cranky Rocks on the way home and just see some of the grandeur. I said it was a boring drive out there, but there are really some staggeringly beautiful points of interest along the way. So here's a little plug for Northern New South Wales and for all things Dickens, and hats off to Plorn too.
Absolutely. We'll talk again soon.
Plorn, Maroon, or Gunter?
Plorn-ish, Maroon or Gunter.
Maroon?
Maroon Le Gunter. Plornish-Ligonter. What?
You shouldn't do that
It's
to a child.
nonsense.
It's like Dickens and Lewis Carroll got together and got high.